Hi, I'm John Skinner from Music Gateway, and I'm here with Spoon. Just about to hear my chat. Yeah, to start off with, I mean, we're 5.5 years old. We launched 3.5 years ago in August 13, and how we started out was to basically be this B2B marketplace, essentially helping connect and streamline the way people got connected globally. So whether that be creative connections, co-writes and collaborations, etc., but also for people that wanted to get, remixes, hire producers, get their recordings done and improved in a much better way. And on top of that, we also wanted to funnel talent through to other people and obviously companies, so be it labels, publishers, libraries. And one aspect of it was sync placements as well. So over those 3.5 years, we've obviously built up a lot of relationships within the music supervision community, and those clients and advertising agencies, which has kind of led to us, developing a new area of the site, which is obviously the sync portal, which we've obviously just launched.
What kind of tips would you make available to emerging talent that are thinking about sync a lot more seriously?
First and foremost, if you're ever, whenever you're recording anything, and it's got a vocal on it, you got to make sure that you get a instrumental. In an ideal situation, I would also recommend that you get a kind of a copy of all your stems, especially if you're recording in a third party studio and you haven't got your own setup. Paying for that extra hour in the studio for the engineer to pull off all your stems and have a copy, it means that you can go and mix that song down again somewhere else if needed. But also, you're increasingly seeing clients wanting stems. The other thing I would also say is I think there's nothing wrong with potentially looking at kind of edits and the way and kind of almost referencing the kind of music that does get placed and synced. If you're an artist and you're just being creative, then obviously do your own thing. I wouldn't be swayed. Films are such a wide variety of music, but in advertising, it tends to be positive, upbeat music that's used. So if you write, sad melodic songs, might be great for films, but rarely is it going to be used for an advertising campaign. Again, it depends on how cool the brand is, because again, sometimes cooler brands will go for something a little bit more trendy and a little bit more out there. There's obviously the trailer market as well, which is obviously its kind of own animal, really. All the stuff that we rep, by the way, it needs to be one stop. So it means that if you don't know what that means, I mean you have to own both the master and the publishing. The common terminology for that is meaning it's one stop. You go one place and clear it. Stuff that we rep, it needs to be pre-approved and pre-cleared so we can do the license. And the reason why that is as well is because the deadlines, especially in TV and advertising, are so short that sometimes it's a few hours window to actually physically get everything cleared. A lot of the TV execs and the supervisors in America, that they're coming in at 9 in the morning and clearing music that day that's going on air that day. It's very, very quick turnaround. And if you don't have all your ducks in a row, you're not going to get, they're going to just pass, because they can't take the risk of not having something legally in place. Another a tip really is to make sure that you register all your works, and you make sure that you've got all your splits, and if you are work co-writing or with someone else, you make sure that that's all tied up. Make sure your paperwork's all in order, because that's key. Supervisors, they can't afford to take the risk. Sorry, we did actually, just one thing I was just going to say, we did actually do a blog recently, which if you go to our kind of blog, it's to do with kind of metadata and the importance of, there's quite a few tips on there, so you might want to have a little look, and you can copy and take a few bits and bobs out there as little tips.
How can emerging artists cut through the noise? Because there's so many people now trying to get at these opportunities, and with platforms like what you're running, so you there's a lot of competition.
There is. I mean, it's huge competition, and I think that here's the problem, and this is the big problem that we address. Okay, is that even the top publishers out there in the majors don't have enough time to service all the supervisors and all their needs. Now, if you're a publisher and you've got massive hits and you've got legacy tracks, you're more likely, well, you're not more likely, you have people more coming to you with license requests. Now, if you're an indie artist or you're unsigned, or even if you're signed and you're on a small label, like you said, how do you get noticed and cut through the noise? Because everyone else and their dog wants to get their music into the hands of the supervisors. Now, the supervisors, they generally speaking, and I'm not speaking on behalf of every single supervisor, but as a general rule, they have their kind of go-to guys. They have their trusted sources. So they have specific kind of companies that they work with where they've built up, sometimes over a very long time, years, personal relationships. And it's not because they don't have a willingness to break new music or anything like that. I think it's a case of one, there's a logistical issue that they have to face where there's got time constraints on licensing and clearing and all that sort of stuff. If a trusted source turns around to them and say, this is pre-cleared, it's done, there's no infringements, there's no samples, there's whatever, then and they've got a reputation with them, they're going to trust that, and they're gonna sign off with that, as opposed to someone they don't know who potentially could say there's no infringements and no samples, but they haven't built up any trust there. And the other thing is that this is another really key thing. It's very time consuming to build these relationships. If you want to work with the likes of John Houlihan and Jonathan McKeown and Josie High, who are board members of the Guild of Music Supervisors and are working on lots of the big films in Hollywood and Lionsgate and and ABC and all that sort of stuff, you've got to go and meet them. And unless you've got the time and the money and the know-how to go and build these relationships, it's kind of not cost effective to do that as an individual artist, and which is where the publisher come in. Now, even the publishers or the labels don't have always enough time. One thing I would say is that the BPI, who represent indie and major labels, who we're a member of, they run an LA sync mission every year, and I'd highly recommend and get introduced to supervisors. But look, we go to LA 5 times a year. We work with the Guild of Music Supervisors. We work with most of their members. We've obviously built these relationships over the last 3 years and invested a huge amount of time. So really, we're doing the legwork of what a big publisher would do, but without tying up your rights. Do your research. Don't just carte blanche send me music, because if I'm working on Ray Donovan, or I'm hitting up Sam Diaz at CBS TV and he's working on CSI in Miami and they use a specific style of music, don't send them UK hip hop that's absolutely not relevant to him and the shows that he's working on. So be quite targeted if you are going to approach people. And that's just again comes down to time. Their time is so short and they're getting bombarded. Going through someone like us allows the artists and the composers to do actually what they're best at doing: writing music, writing songs, producing recordings, and let people like us work with people like you, and give them proper representation that they know that they can trust.
Thank you very
All
much,
right,
man. Take
no
care, John.
worries. Cheers, man.